Okay, let's begin. Measure twice, cut once, and we're going to do rough length and jointing today. So we're going to do the first three things. I don't know why I'm not pinned. You guys got to stop talking. That's the real problem. I'm just kidding. You can ask all the questions you want. Okay, I'm pinned. All right, so here's the stock breakout. Measure twice, cut once. Mitre saw a rough length. We add an inch, and we're going to joint. So we'll go through it as we. I'll walk you through the quiz as we work. No worries, you're all going to get 100%. Don't stress, don't worry. You guys are all freaking out here. There's no reason to. Relax, relax, take a breath. Okay, so today we're going to make a leg. So we have a student in here. He is plugging along like a herd of turtles, really making some ground here. We're going to make a leg. Now, the reason we're doing that is a couple reasons. We want to work through all of the tools, but we also want to show you how to glue stuff together. This is 2 pieces of wood. So if you look closely, you can see a seam right here, right across here. Oh, right across here, sorry. Here and here, where these 2 pieces were glued together. So if we look at our Kitchissippi Chair stock breakout, this leg right here is 2 1x6s. So we're going to go in the back, we're going to get 2 1x6 boards. We're going to glue them together to make these part Ds. So part D is what we're making today of our Kitchissippi Chair leg. So to make that, we're going to need a 1x6 and a 1x6 glued together. Okay? So I could use his project, but that's kind of cheating. I'll go back to our template here. My ears! Ah! It's not that loud, is it? So this is what we're making today, part D. So this is how we're going to lay it out. I'm going to get you a couple pieces of wood. Okay. Got some old cedar wood. So we have some reclaimed deck wood. We're getting fancy today. And the reason we're using it is because it's cedar. And it's so expensive, it's ridiculous. So we're going to do this. We're going to get rid of these guys right here. So we got a piece here, we got a piece here. We're going to glue these 2 together. And just to make sure it's all going to work out nicely, I'm just going to lay it out first. Perfect. Look at that. It's going to fit really nicely on there. No problem. We just need to clean these pieces up really nicely for ourselves. And so the first step really is rough length. So to find rough length, I can measure my template. So we just had to clarify something. So it looks like a good 31 inches is my length. So I'm going to measure twice, cut once, and we're going to cut to 32 inches. Okay, so we got 31 inches, and for rough length, we're going to add an inch. 1 inch for rough length. So there's question number 2. So question number 1 on your quiz is measure twice, cut once. Question number 2 is add an inch for rough length. So now the reason for that is by the time we joint and plane and glue and all that, our pieces are not going to be square on the ends anymore. So we need to square those ends. And so we add an extra inch, especially sometimes cracks and checks come out that we didn't notice before. And if I'm cutting multiple pieces out of a long piece, I need some room for my blade, my kerf. So some wastage. So we add an inch for waste for rough length. Okay. So square, pencil, tape measure. As always, we're going to measure 32. Now this one does have a pretty big crack in it, but we can actually avoid this crack. So I'm going to measure from this end. We're going to go 32. Make a little mark at 32. You can see that here. 32. I'll do the same on this piece, looking for checks, cracks, things that I want to avoid in my piece when I'm finished. Make a little mark at 32. So I got those 2 marks. I'm going to take my combination square and I'm going to square those marks so I can find them easily with my miter saw. So miter saws will be cut rough length on. So what am I missing here? I got my rough length marks and I've squared them. What's the last step? Tell me. Before I cut, I need to make one more mark. What is it?
On the side.
Waist side. Excellent, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, waist marks. So you got an X here and an X here. I'm going to be really careful. There's a check here, and this is a little bit wobbly, so I'm going to have to go careful when I cut this. I wouldn't recommend you guys cutting this piece because there is a large check in it. So this this snowplow unit has these outriggers on it. We're just going to get them up to the height of our table so that our piece is nice and flat. And that's pretty close. That's good right there. Okay, so I'm going to line up my cut. If you remember from our miter saw safety video, we've got a clamp here to hold our piece down. We're going to line up our blade on the waist side of our mark. We're going to clamp it down tight. We're going to go grip like this, fingers pushing down, thumb pushing in, and we're going to cut. Nice. Okay, second piece, same thing. Now I've got a little scrap piece of wood that got caught under my fence. I'm going to move that. Make sure that there's no scraps or dust that's going to throw off my cut. I'm going to line up my piece. Now this is the one with the checks in it, so we're going to go nice and slow. Make sure the saw's up to speed so we don't get any kickback. And we're ready to go. Okay. Alright. Next step is who knows what this tool is called? Don't all shout out at once. Jointer! Yay, Francine, good job, yes. The next step is to joint one edge and one surface. So the quiz is going to try to trick you whether how many edges, how many surfaces you should joint. What we're after is 90 degrees. This and this, that's it. One edge, one surface. If I do all four, they'll be flat, but they won't be parallel. I can't do parallel lines on a jointer. Only the planer can do that. So we're going to do one edge and one surface. So I'm going to unlock the fence using the lock. I'm going to push it back using the hand wheel. Make sure it's wide enough, so not too wide. So my piece can go in there. Make sure my dust collection's open, and we're going to do a surface. Surface goes up against the fence, and we do an edge. So that's what we're going to do. If my piece is lower than the fence, I have to use push stick. So that's what we're going to grab. So one in the front, one in the back, center through. Alrighty, yeah, nice and clean. Now we lost a knot, so you got to be careful of those loose knots. This cedar stuff ain't pretty, so you got to go nice and slow when you're doing knots like this. Now this check mark is going to go against the fence, and I'm going to get a nice 90-degree angle in the bottom. So I can cut a little more, 3 millimeters at a time for an edge pass. So I'm gonna drop the infeed table a little bit, so I can take a little more off at a time. That way we're not taking too long to do that. Well, avoiding the knot somehow. Yuggles. Okay, not bad, but we got a little lip here needs to be taken care of. So this edge, pretty well 90 degrees. We're pretty happy with that. This is done. We're going to joint that. Check mark that. So I still have my other 2 pieces to do, but we're not going to bore you with that. You guys have seen one. I'll joint and glue those together later. We're just going to jump right into the gluing process. And, okay, so the last 2 questions on your quiz are about gluing. So, next question, before we glue, we're always going to make sure everything fits together real nice. With clamps, we call that a dry fit. So I'm going to take my check marks, and I'm going to have them face each other so that I can match those surfaces. And my jointed edges are also going to face each other, my check marks. So that when I glue it together, I've got a nice glue joint with minimal gap. When you glue, and you want to glue the same way you dry fit, make a couple of marks or a triangle There's only one way for that triangle to fit together. Okay, so you see this triangle here? I can take these pieces, I can put glue on them, and when I put them back together, all I have to do is line up my triangle lines. Bibbidi bobbidi boo, I know that I'm where I need to be. So I got my triangle lined up, and we got some clamps here. And we're just going to clamp nice and easy, keeping our top nice and flush. We can see that this side's going to have to come up just a skosh. I can shim that with something, or I can just lift it up with my hands. And we'll get her nice and flush before we crank it down. All good. Okay, I'm not seeing any cracks. We've done our dry fit. So our dry fit is complete. When I've clamped it, I've looked for gaps, there's none. And I've lined up my lines. I've made sure that my piece is sitting nice and pretty. Now, if you've got a work table that you don't want to get glue on, glue hardens really hard. It's not that fun to get rid of. Is put some scrap paper underneath. So that one's not on the quiz, is the scrap paper. But it's often a good idea to throw scrap paper underneath. So we're going to lift up our piece. Thank you. Yeah, go right ahead. That's good right there. So now we're ready to take apart our dry fit. So we're going to remove the clamps. And we're going to grab some glue and paper towel. Now, glue obviously because we need to glue, and the paper towel because we have excess glue in our finger for when we're spreading the glue out, things like that. So we got some glue, we got some paper towel. Thank you. So next question on the quiz, we're going to need glue, paper towel, and clamps for our glue up. So I've got my check marks facing me. So check mark up, check mark up. I'm going to glue both surfaces because it's so porous and we have a bunch of knots here. I don't want to run out of glue, so I'm going to use quite a bit. This is pretty standard carpenter's glue. It's not really heavy duty. I use it for softwood projects. We can also use a tight bond 0, a tight bond, just standard tight bond 1. And that's not a very expensive glue. And for softwood projects, that's all you really need. If you're going to do something fancy, a hardwood project that has to last a long time, you'd like to be a little water resistant, things like that, you can use a tight bond 2, a tight bond 3, which is more like a marine grade, very waterproof glue joint. But for the purposes of this, you can use a white glue that dries nice and clear, or just a simple carpenter's glue, because it's just an outdoor chair. Okay, so let's glue. So we've got our clamps on hand nice and close, we have our glue, and we got our paper towel. Mr. Kermalia even got us some damp paper towel to get rid of some of that glue. So let's start gluing. Now when I glue, okay, now people ask the right amount of glue. If I do a straight line of glue, not bad. If I do a curvy line of glue, it tends to up the volume of the glue that you use, and a squiggly line is usually just enough, depending on the porosity of the wood. So I like to do a squiggly line, and I like to get glue on all of the surfaces I'm going to glue before I start spreading it, so I get an idea of how long it's going to take to get it spread, so that I don't run out of time. So let's talk about glue up time. On standard glue, you're looking at a minute before it starts to set up, minute and a half maybe. On some yellow glues, the quick set ones, they won't say that, but standard setup time, you're looking at 45 seconds to a minute, because it's going to start to get tacky, it's going to start to get hard. If you take longer than that to clamp up, and the glue is starting to get tacky, then it's not going to have as strong of a hold if you move it. If you have to do a little adjusting, then you're running into trouble. So minute and a half tops for this stuff. You're looking at a minute tops for the other stuff. It's starting to get a little bit tacky. So when I've spread it, you can see through it, but it has a nice skin of glue completely covering the whole edge. And that way, I'm not going to get a starved joint. If you've got bare spots, you're not going to have enough glue there. If your glue is too heavy, it's a waste, and it's going to squeeze out all over your project. Also not good. So for this glue up, I'm going to line up my triangle. Very foolproof. Why not just one line? Believe it or not, one line is, if you have multiple pieces, always the bit like 3 or 4 or 5, always good to have a triangle so you don't mix up your pieces. A line is sufficient for 2, but if you're going to go 3 or 4 or 5, 6 wide, triangle is the way to go.
You done? You can leave this here.
That workbench is all yours. Okay, so we're going to get our first clamp on. Now you'll find the glue up clamp is much trickier because now it's all slippery. It's sliding all over the place. You're going to want to take your time and work down your workpiece. So some people work on the end, and then I tend to get a crack in the middle, so I'm just going to work from right to left or left to right so I don't end up with any kind of tension in the piece. Now you'll see a little bit of squeeze out, which is great. It looks like a weld bead. Fantastic. That means you got the right amount of glue. If you don't have any squeeze out here, then you probably don't have enough glue. And you might even want to consider, crazy as it sounds, pulling it apart, cleaning up that old glue and adding more. Because a joint that doesn't have enough glue, a starved joint, is not going to serve you well. And the piece might come apart. Okay, so we talked about setup time, about 1.5 minutes until the glue gets tacky. If you wait a full 24, the glue is sure to be cured. If you wait 12 hours, fine, it's probably not bad. If you wait an hour and take off your clamps, you're taking your chances. Always, some people take off the clamps in an hour. I always try to leave it 24 hours. 24 hours until I take my clamps off. Just because, or until I joint or plane the piece, because we really want that glue to harden really well. So if you have a chance, and you want to clean up the glue before it turns concrete hard, wait an hour. It'll become like a putty-like consistency, and you can scrape it off like any old dry glue, like from your school glue that you're used to using. If you wait a full 24 hours, it's going to be very hard, and it's going to take a lot of scraping. So if you have the time, wait an hour, and then get that glue off before it hardens to concrete hard. Okay, so I think we've covered all 5 questions. Are there any questions about the quiz? There's our joint. Seamless as can be. You'd never know it wasn't one big piece of cedar. No questions about the quiz? How are we doing, group? Talk to me. Nope, Francine says. Danielle says, I think she's still working on her quiz. You can do the quiz during the lesson. Yeah, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to make this difficult for you. The quiz is called Stock Breakout. Okay, if your quiz is done, you're welcome to go. Thank you for coming in. Bye-bye.